Imagine building some of the most exciting muscle cars in American history and having your own parent company decide you're not worth keeping alive. That's exactly what happened to Pontiac, a brand that gave the world the GTO, the Firebird, the car that literally invented the muscle car category, gone, erased in 2010, not because it failed, but because General Motors decided it had to die. This is the story of how a company killed its own icon. Pontiac was founded in 1926, named after Chief Pontiac, an Odawa leader who resisted British expansion in the 1700s. It started as a companion brand to Oakland, another General Motors division, but by the 1930s, Pontiac had completely replaced it. For decades, Pontiac built solid, reliable family cars. Nothing too flashy, nothing too exciting. That was about to change completely thanks to one man. In 1956, a young engineer named John DeLorean joined Pontiac's engineering team. Yes, that DeLorean, the same man who would later create his own car company. DeLorean had a radical idea. Take a mid-size family car, drop in a massive engine meant for bigger vehicles, and sell it as an affordable performance machine. The result, in 1964, was the Pontiac GTO, widely credited as the car that invented the entire muscle car category. It was fast, loud, and affordable, and it turned Pontiac from a boring family brand into the coolest name in Detroit. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, Pontiac kept building on that image. The Firebird, launched in 1967, became a cultural icon, later immortalized by the Trans Am in the movie Smokey and the Bandit. Pontiac wasn't just selling cars anymore, it was selling attitude, rebellion, and speed. But the golden era couldn't last forever. The 1973 oil crisis hit muscle cars hard. Gas-guzzling engines became a liability, not a selling point. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, Pontiac struggled to find its identity again, releasing cars that tried to recapture the old excitement but often fell flat, both in quality and design. Worse, General Motors had a growing problem: too many overlapping brands. Chevrolet, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick, GMC, Cadillac, all competing for the same customers, often with nearly identical cars wearing different badges. Pontiac increasingly became just another version of a Chevrolet with a slightly different grille. Customers noticed. Why pay for a performance brand that no longer felt different from anything else in the GM lineup? Then came 2008. The global financial crisis pushed General Motors to the edge of total collapse. The company needed a government bailout just to survive, and as part of the massive restructuring that followed, GM made a brutal decision. It would cut multiple brands entirely to save the company. Saturn was killed, Hummer was sold off, and Pontiac, despite 84 years of history, despite the GTO, despite the Firebird, was shut down completely in 2010. Not because it was losing money in any dramatic, headline-making way, but because GM's own leadership decided the brand no longer had a clear enough purpose to justify keeping it alive. Dealerships that had sold Pontiacs for generations were told to simply stop. No new models would ever be built again. Today, Pontiac exists only in memory and in the driveways of collectors who refuse to let it go. Classic GTOs and Firebirds have become genuine collector's items, some selling for well over six figures at auction. There's a strange irony in that. The brand GM decided wasn't worth keeping is now worth more than ever to the people who loved it. Pontiac didn't die from bad engineering or from a lack of passionate customers. It died from corporate math, from a parent company that saw too many overlapping brands and decided one had to go. Sometimes the most iconic names aren't killed by failure, they're killed by the very companies that built them.